Welcome into the Train with the Best podcast, the podcast that brings high performance to the people. I'm Craig Hoffman, a fitness and media professional.
And I'm Chris Gorres, an international presenter and master trainer.
And today we're going to talk about, or really not talk about it, Chris, we're going to answer the question, how much is too much when it comes to strength, when it comes to power, when it comes to speed? Is there such thing as enough at the highest levels of performance? Because it sounds like a very silly question. Why wouldn't you get more? Why wouldn't you just want to be, hey, I'm really strong, but look, can I get possibly stronger? I'm generating a ton of power. Could I possibly generate even more? But I think as this conversation will uncover, there actually is a point where perhaps, Chris, enough is enough.
There's 100% a point, right? Like there's that law of diminishing returns. There's the law of risk versus reward. Sorry, I messed that one up. But can you squat 500 pounds? Is the difference between a 300 and 400 pound squat the same thing as the difference between a 600 and 700 pound squat, right? Like there's all kinds of questions to be answered there, and yeah, it certainly depends on the athlete, certainly depends on the sport, all those things. But there's always going to be that law. The reason why it's called a law is because it's universal. It's not something that like you get to pick and choose when it works and when it doesn't work. But there's a law of diminishing returns, and there's a law of risk versus reward. That's just something that is universal that everybody has to live by.
Yeah, somewhere in here, there's a terribly dark joke about laws being something that apply to everyone, but I don't feel like going down that pathway. The point is, yes, to what you just said, I think the biggest factor here, the easiest thing, because some people still might be like, okay, I kind of get what you're saying, but like, can you be a little more concrete? Number one thing that I would say that makes this a very easy to understand conversation is there's only so much time. You can only focus on so many things. And so if you get to a point where your squat is, if you're Saquon Barkley and you can squat 600 pounds, and maybe if you continue to work on your squat, you could squat 650 pounds. But in order to do that, it's going to take a ton of work because you are very, very close. It's easy to gain 100 pounds on your squat if you're squatting 100 pounds and you have never trained before versus you are up near your physiological barriers of how much you or any human can actually push, certainly relative to body weight or height or limb length or whatever else. So could you, if you wanted to be the world's greatest squatter, potentially work on your squat more? Yes, but if you're an NFL running back, you also have to spend time on other parts of your body, other movement patterns, your speed training. Does the increase in squat potential come with potential downsides to, actually more muscle than you want to be able to play at your ideal weight or whatever it is? And obviously we talked about, weight and body types and how those can be misleading last week. So that's not said flippantly. It's just like, these are the possibilities. And so then, that I think is the easiest explanation of like, okay, we got that. There's only so much time in a day. There's only so many things we can work on. There is a point that enough is enough. But I think then, Chris, the actual like, hey, we're bringing high performance to the people part of this is like, when is enough enough? How do you think about that conversation? And maybe you have some examples in your career working with athletes where you've said like, hey, I think we're good here.
Yeah. So this is a tough conversation to have. It's the most challenging conversation that I have to have, and I'm not always the best at it. I've messed up this conversation many times, and I didn't do it justice. Specifically with high school football players, right? I know as a strength and conditioning coach, I know who somebody who has seen this story before that, hey, like more strength isn't always the answer to you improving your performance on the field, right? However, that's not why you came in here. You came in here because you wanted to get strong. You wanted to feel strong. I'll use Saquon Barkley as an example. Can Saquon benefit from going from 600 to 650? No, probably not. There's no more benefits there. He's not going to become a better running back because he went from 600 to 650. But try telling Saquon Barkley that and see if he believes you. Because to him, his superpower comes from him squatting. That gives him confidence. That's what he likes to do. That's what he identifies himself with. If you take that away from him, if you say, hey, we're not going to squat anymore, we're going to do single leg stuff instead, we're going to do this, like he's going to hate that. And he's going to feel like something is missing, right? And so this is why I say I haven't done a very good job in the past of communicating with my players and saying, hey, we're going to go through a phase here where your weights are going to come down Don't worry about it. Be okay. Don't, not to say that you should be okay with it, but just understand that this is a part of the process. Your weights will come back. Your numbers will come back and they'll go through the roof. And here's how this all kind of goes into like what we're trying to build for the season, right? And that takes a lot of communication. What you can't do in this conversation particularly is just because you know something and understand it, don't assume that your clients are going to know and understand and care about it the same way that you care about it, right? Because the same thing that I just said about squat could be said about beer. How many calories in a beer are worth the calories? That's going to be a different answer for most people. Like, hey, I need this drink, Chris. Like, or no, like drinking is stupid. I would never drink. I never drink at all, right? Everybody's identity is a little bit different. So for our strength-based athletes, I think some of the things that you go through as a trainer is, how do you have that conversation with them and say, hey, we're strong enough, but if this is the stuff that you like to do, we'll keep it in here because I know that you like to do it. But here are some of the other things that's going to help support this so that we can continue to do this without adding risk, without like jeopardizing your performance, and while building all the other things that we want to build, right?
Right, for sure. And, that risk element is so huge. Like, is it really worth stacking some more plates on the bar, putting that amount, especially we're talking about a back squat, like on someone's back, but also, a heavy deadlift or whatever else. You don't want to strain a pec benching because you were trying to PR in week 8
Right.
in the middle of your NFL season or even your high school football season when like you had enough. And so I think on the communication side, one thing that can be really helpful is to just have the conversation of why they feel like they need to get more. And to say on the programming side, you can keep it in. Like once you hit enough, it's worth keeping. If that thing is helping make, like a part of what's making Saquon is the fact that he can bent or squat 600 pounds or clean 405.
Right.
Then like, I don't want to just be like, okay, well, we did that, check the box. Now we're going to go over here and start, I don't know, deadlifting and whatever else. And we're going to ignore those things. Like, no, I just want to keep it. I just don't want to keep adding. Like, we're good. We're good right here. But if you can, hey, okay, you want to go more. I think this weight on the bar should be enough. Where are you not feeling strong enough? Oh, well, actually, that's a power thing. Well, let's change it up and like let's add some accommodating resistance, or let's change up how we're approaching this exercise. Let's take some weight off the bar and try to move it more powerfully. And we can use a bar speed test, and that can be your new number that you get obsessed with. Like there's all different ways that you can do it, but at the core of that is a conversation with the athlete to say, what is it that you are not getting right now that you feel like this thing needs to continue to grow? Because my professional expertise and my experience tells us that this should be enough with where we are right now.
That's right. That's right. And so, when I take a look at performance stuff, because like you said, we measure way more than just what's on a bar. We measure the bar speed. We look at actual speed when there's no bar, right? We look at all those things. Then it's like, hey, what are you the things that you're trying to improve? Now, there are situations, there are occasions where people say, "Hey, I need to squat more. I need to get big."
Sure,
cool, but that's usually a player who knows that they need to gain weight. That's usually a player who is nowhere near 600 pounds.
Yeah, squatting 600.
Yeah. Like we're talking about kids who are just now starting and getting into lifting and things like that, and that's a legitimate thing. Like, hey, let's get you strong as heck first, and then we'll figure out what to do with that strength, right? So that is a thing, right? But once you get there, then it's like, hey, we got strong. We are strong. Something is not firing the way that it should fire, right? Something is going on in your body that's not performing the way that it should perform, and it's not how much weight that we're putting on the bar at this moment, right? So how do we improve those things? Because if these are the things that you really want to improve on, then this doesn't have to be the main thing. I'm not saying that we take it away. I'm saying this doesn't have to be the main thing. And let's be a little bit more strategic about how we use this, right? So that we're not doing 3 workouts a week dedicated to increasing your squat numbers.
Right. And so let's take that down to 1, and then let's maybe do some single leg work, or let's do some velocity based work, or whatever it may be. I think another very simple thing that can really challenge people, and I think is a pretty easy one, is okay, well, you're doing 1 rep at or 3 reps at I'll say 400. We'll pick a more like high school-y type of number. I would love to
Shit.
squat
Yeah.
400 pounds, but like for a high school football player, that's still really impressive, right?
That's good for a high school football player.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so if they're squatting 405 and they're doing it once and then they rack the bar and they're hooting and hollering, it's like, great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't really want to put 500 pounds on this kid's back, but what if you could do 405 twice? All right,
Mm-hmm.
let's go. Let's go, Billy. Let's go. Let's go. Whatever other high school name
Let's
you want to throw out there. But like, can you do it twice? And then you think of total training volume. You've now gone from, instead of saying, hey, okay, your total training volume, if we could add 50 more pounds, is 450 pounds. Well, now you're doing 800 pounds because you're doing 400 twice. And so now one, that's great for an actual strength gain. So if the goal is to get stronger, not just to have a sexier PR number, then you're doing better work. And we're also, as long as we have an athlete that's actually capable of that, we're not necessarily overloading the bar. There's a different level of risk. Obviously, you need to be careful of the fatigue. If like their 1RM is 405 and they're barely getting it out, then you're not necessarily going to have them try for a second rep. Or if you do, you better have a very good group of spotters around and the whole deal. But making that the goal as opposed to we're trying to add more, like that is another trick, if you will, to throw in the bag of different possible outcomes.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned goes all the way back to your programming and your assessments, right? Because what did you make matter throughout the course of your program? If in your programming the only thing that mattered was how much weight we're lifting, that's your fault now. You created that problem, right? So in your program, you should have multiple things that you're trying to achieve. We're not just trying to achieve how much you can lift, we're trying to achieve how far you can jump, how high you can jump, how fast you can jump, how fast you can move this bar. Those are all things that should be tracked throughout the course of your program. And if you are tracking those things, then the athlete starts to learn, oh, these are all of the things that are important, not just this one thing, right? Things like you talked about, like we're not just measuring 1RM, we're measuring 3RM and 5RM, right? We got this for one, okay, but like what's your 5 rep max? What's your 3 rep max? What's your single leg max? What's all those things should be built into the program so the athlete already like intrinsically cares about more than just one thing.
Right. If you're a strength coach for a high school or a college or a team, and the only thing that matters is that board with the leaderboard,
Yeah.
the 1RMs up top, like, are you actually serving the athletes, or is your goal to make them better on the field? And I think, keeping the main thing. Oh my God, we haven't said that in a while, but keeping the main thing of what are we actually trying to accomplish here? And again, that goes back to what I said about the conversation, right? I need to get my 1 rep max up. Why?
Yep.
Just stop them in their tracks. Why? Well, because I'm competing with, no, that's not what you need. Like you're competing with, are you competing with them for a 1RM bragging rights because you're a high school kid, or are you competing with them for a starting spot? And if so, like, how do you become a better football player, a better volleyball player, a better whatever? Not how do you get if your head coach is deciding who starts based off their 1 rep max, then I hope you have a new coach soon.
I think the other thing that happens is like, look, we don't live in a competitive sports society. We live in a comparative sports society, and that's unfortunately just true all the way into youth sports. It's one of the main like things that make youth sports so despicable to me sometimes is like just the comparativeness disguised as competitive. Like, oh, I'm so competitive, I just want to compete. And like, no, you don't. You just want to compare yourself to everybody else, or you want to see what everybody else is doing compared to what you're doing, right? And I don't fault kids for that. I don't fault parents for that. And it takes a little bit of conversation in the sense that like, hey, like, I get that you take pride in outworking your competition. That's a thing, right? Especially for our people who are competitive and who are competitively internally driven, right? They want to feel like I'm doing more than the competition, right? And part of that is going to feed into like, all right, did I work as much as I could? Did I do as much as I could? Am I getting the most out of my workouts? Am I maxing more than the other guys are maxing? Especially in like a football offseason, like guys want to feel like, oh, I put in as much as I could put in today, and that I outworked my competition today, right? So like that's a thing that's something that I had to learn how to respect, and I'm still learning it to this day, right? Like when I took over the strength and conditioning program at Benedictine, one of the biggest questions that I had to answer was, hey, we don't lift enough. Why aren't we lifting, right? That's because on me, I didn't do a good enough job of explaining, hey, what is it that I'm doing over these next 2 to 3 months? What am I building here? And sacrificing a little bit of the lifting, knowing that I can't do everything all at once, knowing that I've got 50 kids training with me at the same time. Like, what is it that I'm going to do here that's going to keep everybody safe and effectively get them to where they want to go? I didn't do a good enough job of communicating with the team and with the other coaches that, hey, like, we're going to sacrifice some of the lifts here just for now. It's going to come back. I promise. Nobody's going to get weak. We're not. We may be like sacrificing the progress that you've been making on deadlift and bench and all that other stuff, but I promise it's going to come back. And if you just trust me and stick with the program, here's where that's going to come back, and I promise we'll all be stronger. We'll all be ready for the field. We'll all be ready for football, right? And that was on me. Like, it wasn't because I was wrong. It was because I didn't do a good enough job of communicating where we are, what we're supposed to be doing, and when we're supposed to be doing it. And the kids felt like, I'm not working hard enough. That's not on them. That's on me. Right. So that's the part where, like, you can be right and wrong at the same time when it comes to, like, is strength enough, you know?
Yeah, no, it comes down to communication. And so, in summary here, communication is everything. Always make sure that you're clear with your clients or your team or whoever with the goals and keeping the main, like, identifying clearly for them what the main thing is, why getting strong is important in the first place. I want to be strong. Okay, but you want to be strong to do what? To move people, to jump higher, to be faster, to be more explosive. Like, what is the thing that you're trying to work on?
And define like the different types of strength. Like, 1RM strength is one type of strength, but there are other types of strength.
Yeah, for sure. And, endurance, as I'm sitting here in my endurance world, like, that's a different kind of necessity. Like, being stronger in my 1RMs helps in that, but it doesn't replace the actual work of doing rep after rep after rep after rep. Okay, you get it. And then the other big thing is to kind of like really underscore and simplify as much as we can. The point at which enough strength is enough is the point, I feel like, when the growing or the gaining of strength becomes very difficult. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. It's like, oh, I hit the wall. I gotta just push harder to keep going. It's like, no, if you've gotten to the point where you're at, and now look, if you're training like a high school, we'll go high school football player again, since that's the person we've been using, and they're deadlifting 185 pounds, unless they're a 130-pound receiver, like, that's a problem. Yeah, you need to keep working with them and figure out where the energy leak is and, like, what is going on that a high school football player cannot deadlift more than 185 pounds. But assuming that we're talking, like, relative body weight, pretty big numbers. If all of a sudden the ability to continue adding weight to the bar week over week with a progressive overload or workout, not even workout out of workout, let's say week over week. And then maybe even you take a deload week, you let the body heal up, you go back to it, and you're still kind of up against that wall. Just maintain that. Then go find something else. Find the other thing that is the limiting factor in continuing to grow in whatever area you're trying to grow in. And then I bet you if you come back and you do more work on other areas, that deadlift might have gotten a little bit better. You'll be able to come back to it once you kind of get back in the rhythm and pick up maybe at 80% of what it was, but now you're going to be able to go 90, 100, 110%, and then you'll hit another wall. But when you get to that point that the growth, like, we got 405 on the bar and I just can't get 410, you're good. You did it. Congratulations. The point that you don't really need to work on that anymore. Just keep maintaining it and then round out your program. Take the time that you were focused on getting to that point and focus it on something else to continue to improve your athletic profile to help your game.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say too is, like, strength is a very big component of what we do. But it's not the main thing. It's never the main thing. The main thing is performance, right? So it's a component of your performance.
Perhaps it's a component.
What's that?
So perhaps the biggest component, because
it's one of the biggest components for sure,
and that raises all other boats.
Correct. But if you're doing your programming correctly and you're changing your programs, you're changing the lifts, you're changing the way that you lift, there shouldn't be a 6 to 8 week, 12-week linear phase where you're saying, hey, all we're going to do is, like, focus on increasing your bench for the next 12 weeks, right? Like, that's like our phases might last a month.
High perform in a powerlifting competition.
Yeah. Like if your goal is to become a powerlifter, this is not the conversation for you. This is absolutely a different conversation. But, like, if you're programming in 3-week phases, if you're hitting the movement matrix, if you are hitting the numbers, then like what happens is like you go through a 3-week phase where you're trying to improve squat, but then the next 3 weeks we're trying to improve single leg squat. The next 3 weeks we're trying to improve speed squat, and then after that we go back to squat, and guess what? Those squat numbers improved without having to focus on it, right? And like you said, if it's getting to the point where it's not improving, okay, but you're not getting weaker, you're not getting worse, and you feel better, right? Like, okay, you squatted 400 pounds, but what did that cost you? Did that cost you a bad back for a week? Did that cost you bad knees and like you just feel awful for the next 3 days? Because now maybe your number didn't go up, but you hit that and it didn't tax your body quite as much anymore.
Right. And then you can go from 1 to 2. And you can,
exactly.
The thing is like you get, okay, my 1 RM was, I'll use more of my realistic numbers. Let's say my 1 RM is like 255, right? And if I can get that, amazing. And then if I can get that 2, 3, 4 times, now maybe I put an extra 10. Now maybe I'm going for 275. Put it some 10s on either side, and like probably going to hit that. If I can do 255 3 times or 4 times, or especially 5 times, and I've earned that ability to go up. And that actually goes back to like on a totally different level. Like one of the easiest ways to program for Gen Pop is keep rep ranges in the 8 to 12. And once they can do the weight that they used to do for 8 for 12, then that's when you go up in weight. Like it's just the simplest way to do it. Like, oh, you can do 12 now?
Isn't it crazy how simple it is sometimes? Yeah. Like we don't have to make it so complicated.
Like, okay, we're going to do a goblet squat with a 30-pound dumbbell. Oh my God, I can't do 8. 3 weeks later, they're doing 15. It's like, okay, go grab the 40.
Yeah. It's so simple sometimes. It's so simple.
It really is. Keep it simple, stupid. All right. There is a lot of complex stuff in training. Sometimes the basics, the younger the training age of the client, keep it simple, people.
Yeah, all right. Absolutely. Especially when it comes to strength, though. Like when it comes to strength, keep it simple. You don't have to do all the crazy stuff. Like when we're teaching mechanics and we're teaching all kinds of other things, sure. But when it comes to strength, keep it simple.
Like really, that is now. We could go off a whole other tangent and do like a 3-hour, like it really is just like, oh, you could do 3. Okay, well, should we go up? I don't know. Try it in the next 3 weeks. See if you can get to 5. Okay, cool. You can do 5 now. Now you can go up the next time. By the way, We'll come back to this in 3 weeks, and we're going to do something else in the meantime. And I promise you, all your strength gains in the squat realm aren't going to go away. All right, that's our show for today. Next up for us, next time you hear from us will likely be when we are in Indianapolis. That's right. Our annual NFL Combine trip is coming faster than I'd like to admit. It's really messing me up, Chris, because I have a trip. Like we're recording this on Monday afternoon on President's Day on February 17th. I leave for Indy a week from tomorrow, but I have to go to Phoenix first. So
yeah, you got quite a bit. Like I feel like I'm traveling quite a bit over the next, starting from last week at the Super Bowl, and then next week Combine, and then I've got a couple pro days that I'm going to jump out to, and then spring training. I'm going to head down to spring training in Fort Myers.
Nice.
So it's quite a bit of traveling. So I'm already like not looking forward to the plane rides, but yeah.
Is what it is.
We're here. This is it. So
we are here. Here next week for us, we'll be in Indy. So looking forward to that. We'll see you guys then. I always record a couple of interviews, so we'll disperse those out over the next couple of weeks as we catch up with folks from Exos, and we'll see who else we get to. So we'll probably have an Araya fish sighting. It'd be 3 straight years for Araya. So if you have nutrition questions, send those in at Train with the Best 21 or at Craig_Hoffman at Trainer Gorres, and we'll ask Araya Fish from Exos your nutrition questions. Other than that, we'll see what else happens next week. Looking forward to it. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening to the Train with the Best podcast.